from a small farm in Hopkins County to a very important seat of judgeship in a very large and fast-growing metropolitan county. This man, in many years of private and public service, has written a record that could well be the envy of any public official. During the past 30 years, this gentleman seated on my left has served in elected public office. During the past 20 years, he's been your county judge. And during the past 20 years, he has been one of the most outspoken men, not only in Dallas County, but in our state, for the things that young William Yanis was speaking of when he said that no state or nation can survive without respect for the law. Whether it be working with a juvenile offender, whether it be the regulatory authorities of the county judge's office that play such a very important role in making sure that our citizens obey the law, or whether it be as the presiding officer of your commissioner's court, Judge Sterrett has always, because of his conscience and his convictions, not only upheld the law, but at every opportunity has set forth an example that the citizens of his county and his state could follow to be good citizens.
Balch Springs, Texas is deeply embroiled in controversy that promises to get worse before improving. At Monday night's council meeting, two newly elected councilmen joined with Councilman C.H. Freeland to renovate city government. With one councilman absent, there was only one vote against the trio. The mayor, who protested strongly, can only vote in a tie. The principal target was the police department. Chief James Holly and his father, the police lieutenant, were fired, and two other officers resigned, leaving only one on the force. We asked Councilman P.W. Carter and Freeland what was wrong.
Well, it depends on who you are. If you are stopped by a policeman in the city of Balch Springs, it has been in the past, if you were stopped by a policeman, it would depend on who you are as to whether you would get a ticket or not. I've had these complaints.
Well, I have heard from the chief of police out of Kleberg that he could not come in our city and was authorized, wasn't asked to stay out of our city by our chief of police, James Holly. And also, the Mesquite Police Department wasn't allowed to come over in our city. And several of the county officers, they didn't have any cooperation with them whatsoever, and they have give our present officer orders not to cooperate with the county sheriff's department.
You care to guess as to why?
Well, I have no idea why, but we have an awful lot of corruption in our city, and don't seem to me like that no way that we can get it corrected with our present officers.
Mayor Renfro and Councilman Rogers give their thoughts.
But I think that there was not a just hearing for our police officers that were relieved of their duties.
You think those officers have done a good job, or have they been guilty of some of the things charged?
If there's any corruption and the people are aware of it, they are as guilty as these officers by not bringing it to City Hall's attention.
I think the officers were doing an excellent job, and how, under the conditions they had to work under out here, the money we were able to pay them.
Well, I hope that these councilmen, newly elected councilmen, will wake up to the fact that they have a job to do for all the people and not just a minority.
Some of the problems stem from the fact that Balch Springs was incorporated from a rural area only in the 1950s, and the old council had begun urbanizing with things that all cities have, such as zoning and other regulations. One example, horses could not be kept within 75 feet of nearby houses. This has caused much controversy, since many of the citizens of Balch Springs prefer to live as though they were still in the country. Trying to analyze the situation is like trying to compare apples with oranges. The next big confrontation comes at Friday night's council meeting. This is Rosser McDonald, Channel 8 News in Balch Springs.
Now, President Nixon today, I believe, has asked Congress for authority to clear away the duplication of the federal handout plans here at home and put them under one house. Do you think this will cause quite a furor in Congress?
Well, it's a subject that is fraught with some controversy, and I think there's going to be a great deal of discussion over it. There is, of course, I think, waste that does result from duplication of effort, overlapping. And whereas we could probably say that most of our welfare recipients are actually needy people and are legitimate, there are probably a few who aren't, and we want to make sure that we're not wasting money on those who don't genuinely need it.
Well, the women's part is really the grassroots strength of the party. If it weren't for the women, we wouldn't have a Republican Party. The women do the registration drives, the precinct work, the telephone campaigns, give the coffees to introduce their candidates to the local community. All of this sort of thing is done by women.
Women are becoming more and more active in politics, of course. How long will it be before we have an all-feminine slate, or even a partially feminine slate?
Well, I would think it would be a long time before we had an all-woman anything, unless it were a band or something like that. But I believe that women will increasingly hold positions of leadership and policy making in high offices in the government.
This Pleasant Grove resident has requested information pertaining to the Hahn Freeway and its lighting. This project was in our Crossroads Bond project, and it is in conjunction with the State Highway Department's illumination program. The contract has been awarded by the State Highway Department, and our latest information today indicates that 2/3 of the duct cable is installed. All of the foundations for the tower lights, or for the lights, have been poured, and the project is due for completion by June the 1st, after which time there will be a 14-day test period to accept the lighting project on Hahn Freeway.
Today saying that Don had